Good afternoon or evening, students. I have requested that you watch this video for homework because we have a shortened schedule the next couple days. So I'm going to do the lecture part of our lesson for you to watch at night, and then come in. We will do all the more fun stuff in the classroom. Okay. So make sure you're paying attention. I would recommend you jot down some notes, although I will provide you with a set of notes to go with this lesson as always. So last class, we talked about the geography of Rome and how the Romans built roads to help spread their empire, because as it grew, they didn't have enough of their own resources and they had they end up conquering. So today we're going to look at the types of government that developed during the history of Rome. So we're starting with the Republic. Okay, so if you look at your stems, okay, you can see the word public right in the word republic. We say the word republic every time that we say the Pledge of Allegiance in Home Rome. So the republic, the word public means people. So that should tell you this is a government by the people, similar to democracy. And it lasted from 509 to 27 BCE. That's not a very long time. The system was based on representation for the people of Rome. At the head of this system were two consuls, usually military generals who were in charge of Rome's army. Then they had a Senate. The Senate was composed of Roman citizens who were responsible for advising two key assemblies. The tribal assembly were citizens who elected judges who did not vote on military matters, and the centuriate assembly, who elected judges who voted on military matters because the Roman army was often at war. So Rome concentrated outwardly on war and trade. It was difficult for poor Romans to make any money under this system, and this led to anger between poor Romans and rich Romans. This set the stage for the end of the Republic at the beginnings of empire. Since Rome was at war, military leaders like Julius Caesar were able to obtain power and influence. Augustus, a military leader, became the first Roman emperor in 31 BCE. The Roman Empire lasted from 27 BCE to the 5th century CE. So you'll notice that we have crossed over from BCE to CE here, which would tell you that Jesus lived during the time of the Roman Empire. This set up a precedent. It gave Augustus control of the government while keeping the Senate. The Senate composed largely of wealthy men. Augustus brought great wealth to Rome and was worshipped as a god after his death. Okay, so how did the Roman civilization begin? This is sort of a review of what we learned in class last time. Historians do not fully know the early history of Rome. However, they do know some details. They agree that Rome began as a small collection of towns. These towns were located along the banks of the Tiber River in the center of the Italian peninsula, where the country of Italy is today. Other stories about Rome's origins came from the Romans themselves. According to legends and stories written by the Roman historian and poets, the founding of Rome began with Aeneas. He was a hero of the Trojan War as in Greek mythology. The Roman writer Virgil described this story as an epic poem called the Aeneid. According to the poem, after Troy was destroyed, the Aeneas left the city and settled in central Italy. He lived among the people who had already settled in this area, known as the Latins. They gave Aeneas information about their form of government. They also taught him their language, Latin. In later sons became the rulers of the region. I'm sorry, let me go back again. Latin later became the empire's official language. Aeneas married the daughter of the king, and his sons became the rulers of the region. Two of Aeneas' sons, the twins Romulus and Remus, were abandoned at birth. A she-wolf rescued and raised the boys. This is part myth that we learned about last class. As an adult, Romulus returned to the place where he had been rescued as a baby. There he built a city and named it Rome. The legend of Rome's foundings ties the ancestry of Romulus and Remus to the Trojan hero Aeneas. This is one of the many ties between the history of Rome and that of Greece. The ancient Romans greatly admired the ancient Greeks. Roman cultural and political life was shaped by the Greeks. Some Greeks had established colonies on the Italian peninsula and brought their culture with them. A colony is an area of land ruled by another country. The Romans adopted and adapted parts of Greek religion and political thinking. A group of people called the Etruscans, who had already settled in the area of Italy, also influenced the Romans. So the Roman Republic was a form of government that was established after the king was removed from power. So there was a a tyrant named Tarquinius Superbus, who was removed from power, the Roman people needed a new form of government. They were tired of living under a monarchy, especially a tyrannical monarchy. So in about 509 BCE, the Romans established a republic. A republic is a form of government in which people elect their leaders. Rome was not a democracy as we know it today because not everyone was allowed to take part fully in the new government. Three social classes made up Roman society. These classes were the patricians, the plebeians, and the slaves. The patricians were priests, government officials, and wealthy landowners. They were considered the upper class. The plebeians were common people such as craftsmen, laborers, and farmers. Slaves were usually the people who were captured in war and did not have any role in the government. In the early Roman Republic, the plebeians could vote. However, only the patricians could hold office. The plebeians disliked this rule. In 494 BCE, they threatened to create a new city with its own government. This action forced the patricians to agree to change Rome's government. Over time, the plebeians fought and won the right to participate in many parts of the government. The Roman Republic was made up of three parts. They were the magistrates, the Senate, and the Assembly. So this should sound familiar because a magistrate is another word for a judge. The Senate and the Assembly. Here in our own state government, we have Assembly and a Senate. In our national government, we have the judiciary, the Senate, and the Congress. These magistrates were 20 elected officials who ruled for 1 year. The magistrates acted as judges, tax collectors, and city planners. The two highest magistrates were called consuls. A consul was the most powerful political person in Rome. The consuls decreed laws and led the army. To prevent one person from becoming too powerful, each consul could veto or stop the other's decisions. Additionally, consuls, like the other magistrates, served for only 1 year. In the early stage of the Republic, only patricians could be elected as consuls. After 367 BCE, however, at least one consul had to be a plebeian. The Roman Senate was the second part of the government. The Roman Senate was made up of 300 men who at first were selected only from the patrician class. Senators were elected and held their offices for their entire lifetime. At first, the Senate was the only job. Senate's only job was to advise the consuls. Over time, however, the Senate gained power. It eventually became the most important part of the government. The senators made decisions about laws, foreign policy, and finance. The third part of the government was the Assembly, which protected the rights of the plebeians. The plebeians had an assembly or lawmaking body of their own called the Councils of the Plebes. This assembly could elect 10 officials. They were called tribunes or tribunes of the plebes. The tribunes could veto the action of the consuls and the senators. This group of tribunes could limit what the Senate and the consuls could do, which made them very powerful.